is KIC Radio.
Hello and welcome back to the South Bank podcast. It's been a while, but we are right in the middle of an international break, for better or for worse. But some things never change. I'm joined again by the ever-present Cameron Gorman. And Cameron, catch up with how you've been over these last few weeks with the last call with you.
Yeah, it's been pretty peaceful with our Wolverhampton Wanderers. International break, even with how poor our season's been overall, I find it incredibly boring without the football to look forward to at the weekend, and no potential Molineux visits. But Wolves have several internationals out, some doing more than others, some absent from their countries, and yeah, I'm sure we're going to get right into all of it.
Yes, of course. And for once, whilst the international break has almost been welcomed throughout the season because of how poor the season's been, it actually feels like it's come at a long time this time for Wolves. Actually finding a bit of form before the international break. Last of all, getting a 2-2 hard-fought draw against Brentford, a game that seems years ago at this point.
A game that we were unlucky not to win, I had.
Very unlucky, yeah. Of course, hitting the woodwork twice in that game. And, you know, it was one of those weird games, wasn't it, where we could have easily lost, could have easily won.
Yeah.
But that was long ago in the past. It's now the international break. Wolves have got a number of players away on international duty, including Jose Sarr, Mateus Mane, Jean-Luc de Bellegarde, Hwang Yi-chan, Jackson Chapchua, Yerson Mosquera, Ladislav Krejci, who scored for Czech Republic on his first time being captain, David Mollewolf, who got an assist for Norway, and Wesley Okadua, who made his debut for the England under-21s. So Cameron, have you been keeping up with what our players are doing on international break? Who's been catching your eye? Who have you heard reports about? Who have you expected more of in the Wolves camp?
I certainly have. I think, obviously, the biggest story for Wolves this international break has to be Ladislav Krejci. After the captaincy of the Czech Republic was stripped from Thomas Souček by Miroslav Kubek, Ladislav Krejci was named the Czech Republic captain. And like you previously mentioned, he scored on his first game as captain. What a start for him. A strike from the skipper. And he also won a pen in that game, may I add. So a brilliant performance from him in a comeback victory over Ireland, who were 2-0 up at one point away in in Czechia. But,
may I add, out of pure interest, I actually checked out his game because
terrible fun.
But no pun intended. But yeah, Krejci, even take away the penalty win and the goal, was actually phenomenal in this game. Won the ball back many times. I remember one, I think it was Adam Eder was through, and he timed his slide tackle to absolute perfection. Really good start for Krejci as a captain. So he actually plays again tonight against Denmark in a massive, massive game for them. If they win, they are
World Cup.
The World Cup, yeah. The first time Czech Republic will have been there for, I think, 2010, maybe the last time. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It would be an incredible achievement.
So let's hope for him that he continues this form. But who else?
They've got a tough task against Denmark, however.
Yeah, very tough task. But who else has been catching your eye over the international break, Cameron?
Well, just to touch on the fact that Czechia played Ireland, Doherty actually not getting called up for Ireland this international break, whether that's due to injuries, lack of game time, or a combination of both. Was quite surprised to see that, given he's just recently reached 50 international caps. I think a very notable bit of news, despite it only being for under-21s, Mateus Mane switching his international allegiance from England to Portugal. He came on as a sub in the 70th minute against Scotland. Against Azerbaijan, and he plays tonight against Scotland, is what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Another former Wolves player in that game, Carlos Forbes, playing the whole 90 minutes. Bet you never thought you'd hear that name again in one of these podcasts. But yeah, Mateus Mane, do you think, Jacob, that switching to Portugal from England is the correct choice? Because personally, I do, actually. I think in Portugal, he'll have hopefully less media pressure to allow him to grow and develop his game. And you know how the English media love to get on players' backs or praise them far too early.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think for me, Mane's best position is in the cam as well, and England is such a overwhelmed nation in that position. So it would have been very tough for him to break into there because I don't think he really breaks into the team coming off the left. He isn't good enough in that position, especially not at the moment, of course. He's a young
I don't
lad.
think it's
But
enough either.
yeah. And but with Portugal, like you say, he's out the way of the press. Um, got a few other Wolves boys from past and present who he can play with. Jose Sal actually set to play for the men's team tonight.
Yeah.
Roberto Martinez has said he's actually going to start
It'll
for
actually be his
Portugal.
first senior appearance as well,
Yeah,
despite being in almost every squad during his time at Wolves for Portugal, which is a really surprising stat, I thought.
yeah. So going through the ranks, it might even feel a more familiar place to Mateus. So I actually do, and I wish him all the best for his future endeavours at Portugal, as long as he's not playing against England, of course.
Mhm. Have to agree there.
But one thing that's not disappointed me, but surprised me a bit is Yerson Mosquera went all the way out to Colombia. They've played two games against France and Croatia, and he hasn't played a minute in either
Yeah.
game.
Uh,
Jackson Chatchua apparently putting up quite a good performance against China. Was it a 4-0 win for Cameroon in the end?
it was 3-0, I'm pretty
3-0.
sure.
So yeah, but not too bad from him. I do think
Yeah. Just to touch on that game briefly, a man you may have forgotten Wolves have signed, Shu Bin, on loan at Barnsley at the moment, but he actually played the full 90 minutes for China. Um, so two Wolves players technically featuring in that fixture.
where have you been? But
Good God.
yeah, there was also a landmark appearance for Wesley Okadiwa, who made his first ever youth level appearance for England. Of course, Wesley was the youngest player to ever be named on a Wolves bench for a Premier League game last year, on a few occasions actually. I don't think he ever got on, from what I remember though. I don't think he ever made it, but of course, a lot of time ahead of him in his career. Jean-Luc Bellegarde played for Haiti, was substituted around the 70th minute, if I recall rightly.
And next in action tonight against
Yeah,
Iceland at 5:30.
and one that actually, not at Wolves at the minute, but one that caught my eye. John Arias actually scoring for Colombia against
Yeah,
France.
second minute.
Yeah, so coming into his own a bit since leaving Wolves, perhaps.
Apparently, he has actually been quite good at Palmeiras. But what I find quite entertaining with this whole Jean Arias saga is the fact that all of the Fluminense fans where he was at before he joined Wolves now hate him. Like they call him a Judas and a rat in every post and comment, and it just seems to make the Palmeiras fans love him even more after his seemingly good start there. So, I mean, fair enough to the bloke. It just didn't work out at Wolves.
Yeah,
Clearly got potential when used
mm,
correctly. I think he just suits the South American game more.
yeah, definitely. I think he's obviously a ball playing footballer. He's shown it at times for us. I thought in that almost 8 role that he was playing for the last couple of games, he actually
Mm.
looked better for us before he went. But we're not here to cry the spilled milk. I don't hold anything against the guy. We earned our money back and more on him in the end after a tough 6 months. And
Speaking of former Wolves players, and a current one, Wang Chan featured for South Korea in a 4-0 loss to Emmanuel
yeah,
Agbadou and Ivory Coast. Really shocking. And apparently the friendly was played in Milton Keynes, which
it
is a
was,
very
yeah.
bizarre choice. Very bizarre choice for South Korea versus Ivory Coast. But yeah, he next plays against Austria today at 7:45.
Yeah, I saw a TikTok saying, and I actually fully agree with that South Korea Ivory Coast game. Massive marketing mishap, I think. When you think of it logistically, Milton Keynes not far away from Tottenham, who was playing for South Korea, Heung-min Son. Surely that was one of the bigger drivers behind getting it there, but there was no marketing. It just randomly came up on my Twitter feed one day
Yeah,
that South
really,
Korea
I
played
had
against
no
Cote
idea.
d'Ivoire at Milton Keynes, which
Very
makes
bizarre.
no
Very
sense.
bizarre.
But
Another absentee I was quite disappointed by. Santi not even in the squad against
mm,
England, despite being called up. I hopefully will see him in action against Algeria and a former Wolves man in Ryan Aït-Nouri tonight at 7:30.
Yeah, hopefully he can get a bit more game time in his legs. But whilst it's nice to go on international tangents, see how our players are doing on their travels, ultimately, it's Wolves we're here to talk about. And because it's the international break, there's no game to recap. Let's do a little overview and a look forward with Rob Edwards.
One final thing to touch upon, just on note of the international break. David Moller-Wolfer against the Netherlands actually grabbed an assist in a 2-1 loss. Apparently played quite well, despite coming off in the 64th minute. And tough ask coming against Denzel Dumfries with how he plays for the Netherlands. So I think that's a interesting bit of action. And also, just to touch on Portugal being in North America for their fixtures, Neves and Raul Jimenez had a little shirt swap at the end of their game, the 0-0 Mexico-Portugal. So I thought that was quite sweet to see two of the former Wolves boys still being good mates.
Yeah, it was very nice to see, but while that's in the past, we look forward to the future, and it seems like that future is with Rob Edwards. And
Yeah.
for me, Cameron, I think the mainstream media as such seems to be giving Rob his flowers a bit more now that it's fully deserved.
I
I
agree.
think, whilst, look, I think we've added it up and we could win our next 4 games in a row and still be about 4 points behind it. So it's obviously we're not going to stay in this division. But Cameron, I think it's a pretty simple answer, but have you seen enough from Rob Edwards to give you hope for next year in the championship? It's something we can build on. What are the building blocks? What's he done different to Vitor Pereira that's obviously had a significant impact in our performances?
Well, firstly, to answer your question, my answer is a straightforward yes. I think Rob is the man to take us forward next year. If we start off the next season terribly, feel free to clip this answer and at me on Twitter, calling me out for being wrong, but I don't think I will be. I think Rob is a really good manager. I think the difference between him and Vitor is mainly their man management. I think the players were so beat up in terms of their morale by the time Vitor Pereira's tenure at Wolves ended. But with Rob Edwards finally restoring some belief and pride into these players, and despite our situation being fairly certain, like you alluded to, the players are now playing for the badge on the front of their shirts, and that's all we've ever asked for, really, at Wolves. And I think over the past few seasons as a whole, that's really been an issue for Wolves, especially with the fans. We don't want to see players who want to use as a stepping stone or don't want to give 100%. And to see them doing that despite the situation we now find ourselves in, that restores enough faith in me. Now, as it comes forward to look to next year, I think Rob is the man to lead us forward. I think he's shown recently, very recently, with his game management, that he also has the awareness of how a game's flowing to make the correct changes. We saw that against Brentford with the introduction of Tolu. We saw that as far back as against Arsenal with the introduction of Tom Adozie, who we've still not seen since, by the way. And I think while in the first half of this season, one of the key nitpicks me and you especially had for Vitor Pereira was his poor game management and bad choices of substitutions. Rob Edwards has flipped that on its head, really. And I think that alone shows improvement.
Yeah, I think my greatest compliment to Rob Edwards is the simplest thing. He simplified the way we play. And Vitor Pereira with a group of players that, let's be honest, probably majority of them aren't good enough for this league. I think was almost trying to look at the game too tactically, was trying to ask things of players that they aren't capable of doing. You watch us now, we don't have much of the ball. But when we do have it, the big man holds it up up front, which I'd like to mention Jorgen Strand Larsen, who came through with a few comments about Wolves yesterday, trying to soften the blow, I think, a bit. But I think his departure's helped massively, whilst Tolu is a frustrating figure at times because of his lack of ball playing prowess, I'll say. He, I think, has fully come into an important role in this team when he does play. And that's what we had to do this whole time. When you don't have a lot of the ball, the striker holds up the ball and we play off him. Adam Armstrong's been a good part of that as well, I feel.
Player I think has been much improved very recently as well. Now starting to find form after scoring that goal against Brentford. Hopefully, we see him start to pick up form ahead of the next year.
100%, because he is a vitally important player for the Championship. But Cameron, does the absolute abysmal, catastrophic collapse of Luton Town last time Rob Edwards was in the Championship, does that play any part of your mind? It's for me, it's not massive, but it's in the back of my mind that it has happened.
Yeah, I'd say the same situation with regards to my own thoughts on Rob. I think initially I thought Luton's recruitment was very good. When I was looking at their business on paper, emphasis on paper, when they were heading into the season. However, when you saw Luton line up last year, it became clear that a lot of these players were past their best, even for a league like the Championship. So I'm not going to act like Rob actually did have like a star squad. I also think that with how long Rob had been at Luton up to that point, there could have been all kinds of factors going on behind the scenes in regards to player morale. There was a lot of players who tried to jump ship in January with their situation, and I don't know the ins and outs of Luton Town. But I think Rob has shown enough commitment and know-how in regards to Wolves that and he's done really well to re-establish the connection between fans and the squad. And I think that itself this year was such a massive task that needed to be repaired ahead of next year. Because without that connection between fan and squad, we wouldn't be fully behind the team next year. And then all hopes of fueling a playoff or promotion push or title push, you could hope, would be for now, really. And I think Rob has done the hard part of that task now. And I think in a league he already knows very well inside out and has shown with Middlesbrough and Luton previously that he's capable of leading a team at the top end of that table. I think he is the man for next year still. And I think having someone who knows the club culture very well and understands the expectations of both the board and the fans is really important, and an issue that Wolves have struggled with a lot over the past few years.
Yeah, I think that's an extremely important point you made. Whilst Chapter 2 was poor at Luton, Chapter 1 was magic. Well, Chapter 3, if you will. Chapter 1 was, of course, magical. And, to get that team up into the Premier League at first is an incredible achievement. And, of course, looked en route to do so with Middlesbrough before coming to Wolves as well. So I think for me, I'm in the same boat as you, Cameron. I think we fully agree that Rob Edwards does seem the right man to take forward. You mentioned the atmosphere in the ground, which is, I think, a lot more important than people realise because of how toxic it was at the club beforehand. And if we would have gone into the Championship with that toxic atmosphere, with everything, that's when I feel you start to lose games if we don't have a good start to the season. And then suddenly it becomes a drag, it becomes a dogfight, it becomes a battle. Whereas you go in with a bit of momentum, we will have one of the best sides on paper in the Championship next year, you'd assume. But it's about translating that to the pitch, and I feel like he is the right man to do so. But Cameron, the end of the season is upon us. We'll start with Wolverhampton Wanderers. Do you feel, well, first of all, do you feel we're going down? I assume the answer is yes. But
I don't need to answer.
Will we go down in 20th place? This is where it's time to put your neck on the line.
You see, I have actually stood by this all season. I don't think we'll finish 20th. Even when we were really bad, I was getting absolutely slaughtered by everyone I know for saying Wolves are not the worst squad in the league. We have a better squad than Burnley. I will absolutely die on that hill. Is there some bias in my statement? Probably. But I will die on this hill. We have a better squad than Burnley. And now we're finally in a better trajectory than Burnley. We're picking up form late in the season. And it won't be enough to stay up, is my opinion. I think our situation was long all but confirmed. However, I think we will actually finish 19th. That I will go ahead and say it. I was going to put myself up for some kind of forfeit then, but I don't think I'll do that.
No, I do agree though. I think our team is better than Burnley's. We're playing better football than Burnley at the minute. We look more dangerous than Burnley at the minute. At the Finalysis event that we were both at, I mean, you spoke to some Burnley fans. I spoke to some Burnley
majority of
fans.
the Burnley fans I spoke to all agreed that we'll finish above them and said that we have better squad than them. So take from that what you will.
Yeah, I feel like we will finish in that 90th position. It might even come down to a last day shootout between us two, which will be quite comical. But to end the podcast, let's have a bit of fun now. So the Premier League, Cameron, Arsenal currently 9 points ahead. Man City do still have a game in hand and do still have to play Arsenal. So let's say, for argument's sake, they win those two games. If you feel they will, who do you think wins the Premier League this season, Cameron?
So tough to call, isn't it? I feel like I have to say Arsenal, given the position they're in. However, that cup final will do so much mentality-wise for both teams. And with, like you alluded to, Arsenal still to play City at the Etihad, it's all for the taking still. I think it's a very interesting title race. It could go right down to the wire. But I do feel like it's defences that win you titles, not attacks. I've always been on that hill. And I think Arsenal have a better defence. I think when it comes to that backbone of the season, despite the fact that both teams have to play each other, I think Arsenal will be able to shut out the majority of the teams they play and win 1-0, just scrape by and see that league title out. I don't think they're going to win the Champions League like some of their fans seem to still think, despite the fact that they've shown they can't do it in a cup final. I think Arsenal will see it out, unfortunately. But I would be very hopeful for City to turn that around. And if anyone is able to do that, it is Manchester City under Pep Guardiola. So never write them off.
Yeah, that's a very sensible prediction. I'm not going to go for it. I'm going to say Man City end up doing it. I think that cup final's going to play on the minds of Arsenal, and I feel like this is a brave statement. I feel like Mikel Arteta is a very fragile manager. I feel like that final will play on his mind as much as it will the players, and that's going to.
I can definitely see that.
And I think they bottled it from this point before. I mean, you look at the 23-24 season, I want to say, when they drew 3 games on the trot, one of which at home to Southampton, therefore losing them the league from, I think, 7 points ahead that was. This is obviously they've got the extra 2-point advantage, and you would say probably a better squad this time around. But I really do feel like this title race really is not over. There's many chapters still to be written in this. And I feel like the mentality of Manchester City will outweigh the mentality of Arsenal. Whilst your point about defence is very valid, and we've seen great teams like the Chelsea side, like Man City Centurions, like the Arsenal Invincibles, who their defence was a key fundamental part in why they won the league. I just feel like mentality is such a big factor in winning the league when it gets to those crunch matches as well. And I feel like that's where Man City will do it. But there's 2 other competitions, Cameron, that I want us to put our necks on the lines. This will be revisited at the end of the season. We'll see where we got to. So the FA Cup, I mean, the quarter-final stage now, 8 teams left. Who do you feel names on the trophy?
I think this might be a bit of a hot take. I could easily very well be wrong here. I'm not 100% certain myself, but I think after winning the league last year, Liverpool have to come out of this year with some sort of silverware. And surely they've got to go all guns blazing for the FA Cup, because otherwise Arne Slot will surely know that he won't keep his job, I imagine, at come the end of the season, if he walks out of this season having flopped in every competition. I think he's got to go all guns blazing for the FA Cup to not only keep his job, but also to keep the fans somewhat happy. I know it's not the same highs they had last year, but it's something. So I'm going to go out on a leg and say Liverpool. I'm not 100% confident in that myself, I'll be honest. I think the majority of the teams left in the competition could go ahead and win it, but that's who I'm going to go for that reasoning.
I think France. No, but of course Liverpool.
Pretty sure a country can't win an FA Cup.
Of course Liverpool. I do fully agree with what you're saying. I did think of them, but they do have to get past Man City at the Etihad in the quarterfinals if they are to win it.
That's a very good point, actually.
Is a very tough one. I feel like perhaps Arsenal will win. I think they have to win something. So I feel like maybe the FA Cup's it. I don't know if I trust them in a cup final match.
Making the point about the quarter final, I actually might do a little U-turn already. I might say City, to be honest. I'm gonna stick with Arsenal winning league, but I can see City doing a domestic double with both cups.
Yeah,
I didn't realise it was at the Etihad, admittedly, for that game. I think that definitely changes my perception of it. I think, yeah.
I feel it's very open though. I could, like you say, the FA Cup's massive for Liverpool now, and will that mean they turn up and beat Man City? I don't know. They are also still in the Champions League and been very good in the Champions League, to be fair, Liverpool. So they have to keep that hell of a shot.
Who absolutely bullied them last year when their squad was in a better place mentality-wise, like you say. So yes. I don't see them progressing in the Champions League, personally.
We'll get on to the Champions League after, but it's a very open competition, of course. I'm going to go Port Vale. No, I'm just joking. I could easily see someone like a Chelsea even winning it. And just somehow...
FA Cup, anyone can walk away with it. Palace proved that last year.
Yeah. I'm going to put my neck on the line and say Chelsea win it. I feel like they've got a good draw against Port Vale in the quarter-final. Let's say they get the winner of West...
Final there.
Yeah, let's say they get the winner of West Ham Leeds in the semi-final. And suddenly they're staring down a final. And I feel like, let's say it's a Chelsea-Arsenal final. I feel like there's some... And I hate to use a cliche, big game players in that Chelsea side. You look at your Cole Palmers, your João Pedros, and I feel like I'd probably fancy them in the final over Arsenal, but I digress to the big one, the Champions League. And there's some teams left in this: Arsenal, PSG, Liverpool, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid. I mean,
my answer's simple. I think whoever wins that tie in the next round between Real Madrid and Bayern will win the Champions League. That is my take. I think you could easily say Arsenal or Barcelona, as they have the most favourable paths to the final and will most likely, in terms of who's the favourites to make it to the semis, they are the favourites to make it to the semi-finals on that other side of the table with the easier path. But I think Bayern and Real Madrid are just the two best squads really in the Champions League. Madrid, I wouldn't even say they have the best squad, but they have that Champions League DNA. And no matter how their form is heading into a Champions League fixture, you can never write them off. And they are absolutely phenomenal in that competition, as they are just the masters of it. And that's why I say whoever wins the tie, because I want to say Bayern Munich. I really think Harry Kane's having a phenomenal season. I think they've got a good mixture of experience and young talent with the likes of Lennart Karl emerging, Jamal Musiala coming back from injury now, and some of the veterans in the team like Gnabry pulling their weight still. I really think that Bayern are strong contenders, but it's easy for me to write off Madrid when you just can't do that in this competition. So I think whoever wins that time will win the Champions League. However, I think if it's Madrid who gets to that final and Barcelona beat Arsenal, then Barcelona could win it, because when it's an El Clasico final, anything could happen. But I think if it's not against Barcelona, Madrid are nailed on. I also think Bayern would beat Barcelona, which kind of makes no sense, but that's football.
Yeah, I feel it's a hard one to call. I've had a feeling about Barcelona for the duration of the campaign. I feel that attack is sublime, but I don't know if their defense is Champions League winning material.
That puts me off it.
Is where I'm at. They are in great form, but see, I think it comes down to cost of elimination. I don't trust Arbeloa to win a Champions League with Real Madrid. I don't feel like he's got the managerial prowess to do so, despite the DNA. Bayern Munich, as fantastic as they are, I feel like something in my head is still blinded by that awful performance at the Emirates. I know it was the league phase, but they looked miles below Arsenal in that game. I know that's completely irrelevant to what it is now, but I can't bring myself to say that they're going to win. So that, to me, now is down Barcelona or PSG. I don't think Arsenal or Liverpool quite do it. I don't think they're quite good enough to do it. Well, I don't think Liverpool are quite good to do it. I don't think Arteta's got the bottom to do it. So for me, it now is down to either PSG or Barcelona. I think PSG are the best footballing side in the competition, no doubt. But I have a feeling about Barcelona, and I really feel it's their year. I think they play some fantastic stuff. They are ruthless. They show signs of a Champions League winning side more so than the other teams bar PSG for me, and I just don't see PSG. So it's a massive hunch of a prediction, but I'm going to go for Barcelona. But
Very fair prediction.
we will.
I mean,
revisit these.
it's all up. We say all this now, but anything can change in an instant in the Champions League. You know how it goes. I definitely agree, though. PSG play the best football in the competition by far, and I'm a massive fan of Kvaratskhelia. What a player! Like, one of the best players on the eye to watch on the planet right now, in my opinion. And not to mention former Wolves man Vitinha in the midfield behind him. So wouldn't mind seeing him lift another trophy.
Definitely fancy the championship next year.
I hope so.
So, but I think that's it for this week's segment. We will be back next week where we'll preview the West Ham game. Wolves do return. I'm spoiler alert, I'm not confident, never confident to go to the London Stadium. We have a terrible track record.
Not been somewhere we've liked on our travels during our time in the Premier League.
No, absolutely not. But Cameron, is there anything else you would like to say before we sign off?
No. Enjoy the international break. Enjoy your peace before Wolves have more misery in London. But we'll be back next week to round up the rest of the international fixtures that are played out tonight. By the time you're listening to this, you may already know the results, but hopefully you still feel like coming back to hear our voices discuss them.
Yeah.
Now, thank you for listening. We'll see you next week to preview our trip to the London Stadium. And I'm joined by the ever-present Jacob Jones. I've been Cameron Gorman. And on that note, from Jacob.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone for sticking by, if you're still here. What has been a bit of a different episode, of course, a bit of a filler episode with the lack of content. Wolves-wise going on, if there's anything you'd like to see us discuss, message us on Twitter, comment on Twitter, leave a comment below this YouTube video, and we will discuss it. Or Instagram, and we will talk about it next week. But massive thank you to Cameron for joining me again. Massive thank you to everyone watching at home. This has been the South Bank Podcast. Goodbye.
Goodbye, and thank you for listening.
This is KIC Radio.